"We can hire 3 fresh grads for your salary," Miles Preston said with a smug little smile. "It's just business, Cal, nothing personal." That was the line that ended 18 years of my life's work. My name's Cal Brennan, 55 years old, lead systems architect at Brighton Residential Group. For nearly 2 decades, I built every line of the infrastructure they now take for granted. Tenant portals, maintenance systems, automated billing, custom back-end redundancy, most of it designed and coded by me. I had built them a fortress, and they never once wondered who held the blueprint. Sitting across from me in that sterile, glass-walled conference room, Miles Preston, the new chief technology officer barely 6 months into the company, looked too polished for his own good. Expensive watch-tailored jacket MBA from Kellogg School. He'd been brought in to modernize the company. Apparently that meant gutting the team that knew how it all worked. Diane Mercer from HR sat next to him, sliding a neat folder across the table. "The severance package is generous. 2 months' salary plus your unused vacation." She spoke like a customer service rep canceling a subscription. Detached, practiced. I took the folder. "Thank you. Is that all?" Miles tilted his head as if waiting for me to argue, to threaten a lawsuit, to beg for my job. I saw it in his eyes, that craving for conflict. Something to tell the board later. Proof that I was difficult. But I wasn't going to give him that. "What would you like me to say?" I asked calmly. Seemed straightforward to me. Diane exchanged a quick, confused glance with him. They didn't get it. I wasn't calm because I accepted it. I was calm because I was finished. There's a difference. Miles cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "We'd appreciate your help during the transition. Maybe a consulting arrangement for a few weeks. Help the new engineers get up to speed." I met his gaze. "I'll think about it." I wouldn't. We shook hands, cold and empty. I cleared my desk in under an hour. 18 years of blood, sweat, and coffee reduced to a single cardboard box. A few nods from colleagues, too afraid to meet my eyes, likely wondering how long before they were next. In the parking garage, as I loaded the box into my old Chevy Silverado, my phone buzzed. A message from Eric Chan, the database admin I hired 12 years ago. "Cal, the team's freaking out." "What's happening?" I stared at the screen but didn't answer. "Not yet." That evening on my back porch, overlooking Silvergate Lake, a glass of bourbon in hand, my wife Sarah placed her hand gently on my shoulder. "What now?" she asked softly. I stared at the sunset bleeding into the water. "Something'll turn up," I said, and somehow I knew it would. The bourbon was gone, but the questions remained. Sitting there listening to the waves lap against the rocks, I let my mind drift back to the beginning. Before Brighton was Brighton. Back when it was still called Harborview Properties, just a modest real estate company with 4 apartment buildings and a handful of employees trying to make ends meet. I had been 37 when the founder Harold Prescott hired me. Back then, their IT department was a joke. 2 ancient desktops, a dusty fax machine, and an internet connection slower than a traffic jam on Route 9. But Harold was a visionary. "We're growing, Cal," he'd told me during my interview in a cramped office that smelled like old carpet. "I need someone who can build us something that lasts." Piece by piece, I built it. A basic tenant management system first. Then background checks, automated rent collection, maintenance ticketing, and eventually a cloud-based operations platform that let them manage properties across 5 states. I custom-coded the core infrastructure secure, reliable, and resilient because we couldn't afford expensive vendors back then. When Harold retired 5 years ago, his son Ethan Prescott sold the company to a private equity firm. They rebranded it as Brighton Residential Group, gave the logo a sleek refresh, and started talking about streamlining processes and maximizing shareholder value. That was the first warning sign. The new owners kept me on at first. They saw what I'd built, respected the way the systems ran like clockwork. But over time, the culture changed. Quarterly profits became the only thing that mattered. Every proposal I made for improving long-term stability was shelved as non-essential. I still remember the first rejection that stung. I'd requested a technical writing team to document the complex codebase. "Too expensive," they said. "Maybe next quarter." Next quarter never came. Instead, they brought in consultants, young guys in shiny suits who spouted tech jargon but didn't understand our architecture. They'd listen to my presentations with glazed eyes, then recommend some off-the-shelf SaaS solution that wouldn't integrate with our systems. I kept pushing back, showing them the layers of custom code that held everything together, but eventually they stopped inviting me to the meetings altogether. Sarah saw it coming before I did. "They're phasing you out, Cal," she warned me over dinner one night. I shook my head. "They can't. Nobody else knows how this whole thing fits together."
She gave me a look I'll never forget, quiet, sad, steady.
"That's exactly the problem," she said. I didn't want to believe her then, but sitting there by the lake, I knew she'd been right all along. 6 months before I was fired, the final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place.
Miles Preston arrived from a fintech company out west. Tall, sharp-dressed, all confidence and PowerPoint slides. His first week at Brighton, he gave a company-wide speech about modernizing operations and cutting legacy dependencies.
Translation out with the old guard. His first move was to hire 3 junior engineers straight from college. Bright kids, no doubt. Full of ideas, light on experience. They shadowed me for weeks, asking questions, scribbling notes, trying to reverse engineer systems that took me nearly 2 decades to build. I answered their questions, showed them the framework, walked them through the code, but I could tell it was like giving someone the blueprints to a cathedral when they'd never laid a brick. Brighton's infrastructure wasn't something you could simply swap out with a plug-and-play solution. It was a living, breathing organism. Layers of redundancy, fail-safes, and custom integrations designed specifically for the complexities of multi-state property management.
But Miles, he saw it differently.
To him, my systems were expensive relics. I was an expensive relic. One morning, a week before it happened, Miles stopped by my office. Casual, like he was asking about weekend plans. "Quick check-in tomorrow morning, Cal. Just going over quarterly goals." I should have known. I should have seen it coming. But part of me still believed they wouldn't risk it. That they knew what I was worth.
Turns out I gave them too much credit.
After the termination meeting, the pieces of the past few months clicked into place like a puzzle I didn't want to finish.
The rejection of the documentation team that was deliberate. Keep the system undocumented and its creator becomes the bottleneck. Fire the creator, blame the complexity when things break.
The endless buzzwords about standardization and future-proofing cover for cutting senior salaries and dressing up the company for a sale. Sarah had warned me. I just hadn't wanted to hear it. That night, as I washed the dinner dishes, she leaned against the counter. "So what are you going to do now?" I dried my hands on a towel. "I don't know. Something."
"You'll land on your feet," she said with the quiet certainty of someone who knew me better than I knew myself.
I tried to believe her, but deep down I wasn't sure if I wanted to land on my feet. Maybe it was time to stop holding up a company that didn't value the ground it stood on. It took exactly 2 weeks before the cracks began to show.
I was in my home office that morning, half-heartedly updating my resume when the first call came in. I didn't recognize the number, but I didn't have to.
The voicemail confirmed it, Miles Preston sounding less cocky than usual. "Hey Cal, it's Miles. We're having some issues with the tenant portal. The junior team's working on it, but, well, the architecture's proving a little tricky. Give me a call when you can. Shouldn't take long." I let it go to voicemail, didn't even consider picking up. A few hours later, another message, then another. By evening, his tone had shifted from casual to urgent. Meanwhile, a text buzzed in from Eric Chan's systems, "Been down all day. Maintenance tickets aren't processing. Miles is losing it." I set my phone face down on the desk and stared out over Silvergate Lake. The sun was slipping behind the horizon, staining the water bronze.
I didn't feel triumphant, just tired.
The next morning, Diane Mercer from HR called. Pleasant as ever. "Cal, I hope you're well. We'd like to discuss a short-term consulting arrangement to help resolve some current system issues. Compensation would be generous." I finally picked up that call. How generous? $300 an hour, minimum 4-hour engagements. I paused, let the silence stretch.
"I'll think about it," I said, and hung up.
Sarah found me at the kitchen table a little later, a cup of coffee in each hand. She slid one in front of me, sat down opposite. "What are you thinking?" she asked. I watched the steam curl from the mug.
"I'm thinking they're finding out exactly what I was worth."
The next 3 days were a blur of missed calls, unanswered emails, and increasingly desperate voicemails. Miles, Diane, even Ethan Prescott, the founder's son, still sitting on the board, reached out. The tenant portal was down, the maintenance scheduler was crashing. Automated payments failed to process, leaving thousands of tenants frustrated and the finance team scrambling. I ignored them all. Late on the fourth day, as I sat in the living room sketching out a few ideas for future projects, an unfamiliar email appeared in my inbox. Subject: opportunity at Summit Edge Realty, from Lawrence Shaw, Director of Technology. Cal, I heard about your departure from Brighton. We've always admired your work. Would you be open to discussing an opportunity to help us upgrade our property management infrastructure? I smiled for the first time in days. I hit reply and set up a meeting for tomorrow. Let them drown. I was already swimming somewhere else. We met at a quiet cafe in downtown Briarfield, neutral ground far from Brighton's glossy headquarters and Summit Edge's industrial chic offices. Lawrence Shaw greeted me with a firm handshake and an easy smile, mid-40s sharp mind behind kind eyes. He didn't wear the arrogance of an MBA or the buzzwords of a consultant. Just a guy who respected work that spoke for itself. I've followed your career for years, Cal, he said over his coffee. That property management system you built at Brighton, industry legend. Nobody's done anything quite like it. Thanks, I said modestly. It took time and some stubbornness. That's what I want to talk about. He leaned in slightly. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want something reliable, scalable, secure, something that lasts. I nodded slowly. And you're not looking for 3 junior engineers fresh out of college to slap together a flashy UI and call it a day. Lawrence chuckled. Tried that. It crashed every time we had more than 100 simultaneous users. I smiled despite myself. Sounds familiar. He placed an offer on the table without hesitation. Chief Systems Architect, full autonomy over the rebuild. Competitive salary, stock options, full benefits. 20% higher than what Brighton ever paid me. It felt too good, almost surreal. I looked him in the eye. Why me? There are younger engineers out there, cheaper ones. Sure, he said, stirring his coffee, but we're not looking for cheap, we're looking for right. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift in my chest. Not revenge, not vindication. Just the feeling of being seen. I accepted the offer that night. The next morning, I powered up my work email for the first time since leaving Brighton. My inbox was flooded with updates from Eric Chan. They tried bringing in a legacy system consulting firm. No luck. Tenant payments still failing, systems barely running. Miles is in full meltdown mode. I put the phone down and opened a blank notebook. At Summit Edge, we would build it differently this time. Documentation from day one. Proper redundancy. No single points of failure. I wasn't going to rescue Brighton. I wasn't going to relive the mistakes of the past. A week later, my phone rang again. Miles Preston. I let it go to voicemail. Cal, this is serious. We've lost 3 months of payment records. Tenants are furious. The consulting team says they can't make sense of the database structure without your help. Please call me back. I listened. Then I deleted it. Let them figure it out. I had work to do elsewhere. It was a rainy Thursday when Eric Chan showed up at my new office, laptop bag slung over his shoulder and exhaustion written all over his face. You got time for lunch? He asked, voice low but steady. We ended up at a little deli across from Summit Edge, tucked into a corner booth with 2 sandwiches and a pair of Cokes between us. For a moment, it felt like the old days before the consultants, before the layoffs, before Brighton turned into something I didn't recognize. It's worse than you think, Eric said, lowering his voice despite the lunchtime bustle around us. They've lost access to historical data going back 3 years. Backups are corrupted. The consultants say they might have to rebuild everything from scratch. I wasn't surprised. I'd designed the backup systems with multiple layers of redundancy and encryption. You skipped a step or got lazy about the process and the whole thing locked down. It was meant to protect tenant data from breaches. I never expected the company itself to be the threat. That's not all, Eric continued. He opened his laptop and slid it toward me. I found these while helping the consultants try to decode the payment processor. On the screen were a series of archived emails between Miles Preston and the Brighton board, dated months before my termination. They laid out everything plans for legacy staff reduction projections, for cost savings, and a timeline to replace my systems with cheaper off-the-shelf software. My name was front and center. I read the words without emotion, like scanning a weather report for a storm I already knew had hit. One line from Miles caught my eye. Brennan's systems are unnecessarily complex. He's made himself indispensable by design, not necessity. So that was the narrative they sold. I hadn't built resilient systems, I'd built shackles. Eric closed his laptop with a quiet snap. Private equity's been prepping Brighton for a sale. That's what this is all about. Cut costs, boost margins, make the numbers look good on paper. Miles was brought in to gut the place before they flipped it. It finally made sense. The resistance to documentation, the sudden cost-cutting, the focus on short-term profits at the expense of long-term stability. "Why are you telling me all this?" I asked. Eric gave a tired smile. "Because I quit yesterday. Half the IT team's gone. And because Noblecrest Partners, their biggest client, is looking for a new management provider. They've lost confidence in Brighton's leadership." I leaned back in the booth, feeling the weight of it all settle.
"What's next for you?" I asked. Eric grinned, hoping Summit Edge could use a database admin. That afternoon, I spoke with Lawrence Shaw about bringing Eric on board. He said yes before I even finished the sentence. It didn't take long for Brighton to spiral further out of control.
Noblecrest Partners. Their largest client, managing nearly a third of Brighton's revenue, was threatening to pull their entire portfolio unless the system was restored within 2 weeks. Their tenants couldn't pay rent, submit maintenance requests, or access their portals. Lawsuits were starting to circle like vultures.
Miles Preston, who'd once dismissed me with a smirk, was suddenly very eager to talk.
The first call came at 7:15 a.m. on a Monday. I let it go to voicemail.
The second call came from Diane Mercer that afternoon. This time, I answered.
"Cal, we need your help. This has gotten critical. Miles is prepared to offer double your previous consulting rate, 4-hour minimum. We'll pay whatever you ask." Her voice cracked around the edges, HR calm replaced by sheer desperation. I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I'm employed elsewhere now. Exclusive contract. I can't help you." There was a pause. Then she lowered her voice. "This isn't just about money, is it?" "No, it's not."
The next day, Miles himself showed up at my door.
It was strange seeing him without the executive sheen. His tailored jacket hung awkwardly off his frame, his designer glasses crooked, his expression hollowed by exhaustion. "Cal," he started, not bothering with pleasantries. "Please. The entire system's on the brink. Noblecrest is walking. The board's threatening to remove me. We're losing everything you built. I'll triple your consulting fee. Name your price." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed.
"You made a business decision, Miles. You decided my experience wasn't worth the cost. Now you're seeing what that actually means." He swallowed hard. This isn't personal."
I gave him a sad smile. "That's what you said when you fired me." He tried again. "The board wants to bring you back. Full salary, signing bonus, your old title, whatever it takes." For a brief moment, I felt the old temptation, vindication, respect, a return to what I'd built. But it was fleeting. If I went back, it would be the same people making the same short-sighted decisions the next time quarterly earnings dipped.
"I appreciate the offer," I said finally, "but I've made a commitment to Summit Edge. I won't break it."
The air between us tightened.
"You know," Miles said, voice sharpening, "there could be legal implications. If we discover you intentionally made the systems difficult to maintain, non-compete violations, intellectual property concerns." There it was, the threat I'd been waiting for.
"The system's exactly how it was when you refused to fund documentation," I said evenly. "Every line of code belongs to Brighton. I took nothing with me but my experience. Have your lawyers call mine."
And with that, I shut the door. This time for good.
Back at Summit Edge, I had no time to dwell on Brighton's collapse. We were building something new, something better, and I wasn't about to repeat old mistakes. Lawrence Shaw and I met the next morning to discuss the news that had broken across the industry. Noblecrest Partners was officially terminating their contract with Brighton. Their announcement hit the real estate tech sector like a thunderclap. Brighton's stock took an immediate dive, and rumors spread that the private equity firm was halting the planned sale. But what caught my attention was the second part of the announcement. Noblecrest wanted Summit Edge to take over their property management systems. Lawrence leaned forward, hands folded. Be straight with me, Cal. Can we handle their portfolio? I didn't sugarcoat it, not yet. Their portfolio is twice our current capacity. The system we've built so far is strong, but it's built for the properties we already manage. We'd need to scale up fast. 3 senior engineers, new infrastructure, and at least 8 more weeks of development minimum. Lawrence gave a slow nod. And if we don't take this chance, Brighton's next buyer will or some national firm with a half-baked SaaS solution. Noblecrest will end up right where they started, burned by incompetence. I could see the wheels turning in Lawrence's head. I'll get the board to approve the hires and the infrastructure expansion. You'll have what you need. For the first time since I'd left Brighton, I felt something close to hope. Not personal satisfaction, but the satisfaction of doing something right. That afternoon, we put out job offers. Some of them went to former Brighton engineers who, like Eric, had jumped ship when they saw where the company was headed. They weren't looking for revenge, they were looking for purpose. Halfway through the week, I got another email. This one from Ethan Prescott, Harold's son, and the man who had sold Brighton to the private equity firm. He still sat on the board. Cal, I want to apologize. We were misled about the risks of letting you go. Miles has been removed as CTO. Things are bad. If you ever want to come back, the door is open. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply. Brighton's desperation wasn't my problem anymore. 10 weeks into the build, our new system was nearly ready. We designed it with modular scaling and redundant fail-safes. Eric built a data migration tool that could translate Brighton's outdated databases into our streamlined architecture.
And this time, we documented everything line by line, page by page.
Brighton had been a cautionary tale. Summit Edge was going to be the future. 12 weeks after Noblecrest pulled the plug on Brighton, we launched the first phase of the Summit Edge system. It started with Noblecrest's smallest region, about 2,000 units across western New York. A controlled migration designed to stress test the infrastructure without overwhelming it. If we failed, the damage would be contained. If we succeeded, it would prove we could scale. We succeeded. Tenant portals ran smoothly. Payment processing was flawless. Maintenance requests didn't backlog. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and it was stable. The next regions were already queued up for migration. 2 days before the second rollout, Lawrence Shaw called me into his office. Someone else was waiting for me there, Jeffrey Noble, CEO of Noblecrest Partners. Tall, silver-haired, and sharp-eyed Jeffrey stood to shake my hand. So you're the architect I've heard so much about, he said, his voice calm but curious. Lawrence says you've built us something that won't crumble under its own weight. That's the goal, I said. He studied me for a moment. I also hear you used to work for Brighton. I nodded cautiously, not sure where this was headed. Brighton's in trouble, Jeffrey continued. The private equity firm tried to sell, but with Noblecrest gone and their systems still in shambles, there are no serious buyers left. Lawrence leaned forward, except one. Summit Edge. I froze. Lawrence explained. We've been in quiet talks. If the numbers line up, we're going to acquire Brighton's property management division at a fraction of its former value. But if we do, we'll need someone who knows their systems and can lead the integration. They were asking me if I'd take the lead. I thought about it. The very systems I had built, abandoned and neglected by those who thought they could replace me, now potentially returning under my guidance. Would you be willing to do it? Lawrence asked. Only if the deal goes through, and only if you're comfortable. I sat in silence for a moment, weighing it. Returning wasn't what I wanted, but rebuilding, doing it right this time, that was something else entirely.
I'll do it, I said, but I have one condition.
Lawrence raised an eyebrow. Name it. We do it right this time. Full documentation, proper training, no shortcuts, no cost-cutting that compromises stability.
Jeffrey smiled. That's exactly what we want.
For the first time, I didn't feel like I was patching something broken. I was building something new, something sustainable. This wouldn't be a rescue mission. It would be a rebuild on my terms.
6 months later, I stood in the lobby of what used to be Brighton Residential Group.
The sleek modern logo above the reception desk now read, Summit Edge Integrated Properties. The acquisition had closed for less than a quarter of what Brighton was worth before they let me go. Lawrence and I walked the halls together that morning, greeting former Brighton employees who'd stayed on through the transition. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others offered hesitant smiles, relieved the chaos was over. A few, the ones who had worked closely with me over the years, nodded in quiet understanding.
Miles Preston was long gone, along with most of the executive team that thought cutting costs mattered more than keeping the company running.
Only Ethan Prescott remained, staying on as a consultant to ease the transition with legacy clients. When we passed the server room, my old domain, I paused. Through the glass, I saw the blinking lights of the infrastructure I'd specified. Machines I'd designed, code I'd written.
"Want to go in?" Lawrence asked.
I shook my head. No need. We'll be migrating everything to the new system soon.
In the main conference room, the remaining Brighton staff gathered for the announcement.
Lawrence introduced me to the group. Many of you know Cal Brennan. He built the original systems that kept this company running for nearly 2 decades. Now, as our Chief Integration Officer, he'll be guiding us through the technical merger of both companies into something better than either had before. I stood at the front of the room looking out at the faces, some familiar, some brand new. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel the urge to say I told you so. What would have been the point? Instead, I spoke about the transition plan, the support they'd have, and the culture we were building, where no one would be left behind because of a balance sheet. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A year later, Summit Edge Integrated Properties had become the largest property management company in the Northeast. The full migration was complete. All properties ran on the new system, documented, scalable, and stable. On a crisp autumn morning, I met with Lawrence for one last discussion. The board approved your proposal, he said. The Technical Education Division launches next quarter. You'll have full autonomy to build the curriculum and hire instructors. This had been my one condition for staying. Not a higher title or a bigger paycheck, just the chance to train the next generation to build systems that would outlast them. Later, as I packed up my integration office, Ethan stopped by.
"My father still follows company news," he said. "He always said firing you would be Brighton's biggest mistake. Turns out he was right."
I gave him a quiet nod. Driving home along the lake, the leaves blazing red and gold, I thought about legacy. Not revenge, not regret, just work done right, meant to last. And that was enough.